Now, the men's side, I would say lived up to some of the hype in terms of it was very close, but kind of as was expected. Like if you watched last year and you had a general idea, we didn't see people just shattering world records. There were very few world records broken last year, and that didn't really change this year. So I would say, like, unless you expected something different, we kind of saw a similar idea to last year. Um, Me personally, and I think all of us did not particularly do so great on our predictions here. Um, I was actually saying before we started this recording that my closest prediction was also my worst prediction. I was off by 2.5 on Gustav's exact total, but I had him in 10th instead of first, so I can't claim any credit there. That's an L. But yeah, I mean, this was just interesting to watch. So let's talk about what we saw and what intrigued us. So, Adriana, you start. Tell us something that like either surprised you or impressed you from this men's battle.
Sure. I guess we're gonna start off with the winner, right? Gustav and the 93 kilo battle in general. Um, he performed like he did really well. And I think we all knew he had the potential. Like when I was looking back at my numbers or my predictions, I was like, oh, I wasn't too far off for him. Like I kind of had his squat, um, like I think I predicted exactly his squat, his bench. I was 2.5 kilos off. And then for deadlift, I just thought he would miss his last deadlift because he's tended to in the past. Like he's always been so close to winning. Like we all know the story of when he almost won over Kaiko in 2021 at Worlds. He's always just been like he's been so close and he finally lived up. And that last deadlift, I think it was like around a 10 kilo PR. I'll have to check. But yeah, and it wasn't even it was fast. Like it wasn't even that hard for him. So yeah, it was a crazy watch, honestly, especially in the third deadlifts. I think literally every single guy missed except three people, and that was 393. So it was Kaiko, Gustav, and Gavin. They all made their third deadlift, and then they all placed really well. So yeah, hats off to Gustav because I think not a lot of people had him winning. I believe the percentage was like 4% had him winning within the battle of the 93s. And he finally was able to solidify himself as the number one 93 at this time. Like we'll see what happens the rest of this year at Worlds. But at this time, he's the best 93. He totaled 895. Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah. Okay. So I think you picked a good thing to start with. Obviously, this was also like one of the most has been the most anticipated weight class in general for the last couple of years. The 93s have been stacked. We've had battles at Worlds, we've had battles at Sheffield, and of course, SBD picked the lifters that people wanted to see in the battles, and we had 493s represented here. So yeah, obviously, so we had Gustav, we had Jonathan, we had Gavin, and we had Carlos Peterson Griffith. So I would say this weight class lived up to the hype, right? Meaning, I don't know if the men lived up to the hype in terms of like the totals in some of the other weight classes, but here we had like pretty good execution, right? We all, at least on us three, we all expected there to be some sort of battle for the squat world record between Gavin and Carlos, and they both performed, right? Carlos, um, who took it first? Gavin took it first, right? Gavin
Yeah,
took it, then
Yeah.
Carlos took it, then Gavin retook it. Like, so we saw some execution. The world record got broken 3 times there after it's been a while since anyone's broken it.
yeah,
Then
and
on
Gavin
bench,
finally went 3 for 3, which was which was
yeah,
awesome to see. Yeah.
it was hype. Those 3 white lights, nothing could be overturned.
I
Oh no, it
think
was
his
two
last
white
was
lights.
yeah,
It
his
was two
last
white
was
Right.
lights.
So
Yeah.
two.
he got three on the second, three on the
Yeah,
Yeah,
second.
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Three was second.
Yeah. And then moving on to bench, like obviously this like played out like mostly within range, right? Like we all expected Keiko to take the world record. Of course, he did that to make up for his squats. Gustav benched 215 right around like where we've had him. The two people that were a little bit surprising is so Carlos Peterson Griffith. He actually benched what was it? It was 182.5, I think, right?
Yeah, and he
Yeah,
he
one eighty
opened
two point
up
five.
Um,
which was a big step up from his previous PR. And then he went for 190 on his third, took the 7.5 jump, and he was like inches away from finishing that. So he
mhm.
definitely he was talking, and he said like 190 might be in the cards, and like he was right around there. That was like that like if I mean I think 187.5, and he gets that. Like
Yeah, I
he was
agree.
right there. And then obviously was some controversy like Gavin, right? He finished with only 205, I think, on
Yeah.
bench.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
he missed his third bench, and it was just weird. Like I need to rewatch it, but I remember the call. He got, maybe Ish can help us because he was actually there, but he got a red light from the center, which was on depth.
Yeah, so the call was he got
Here, oh, did he freeze?
hello?
Okay. Hello?
You guys hear me?
Yeah, yeah, we can hear you. Yeah, you go ahead.
Right, let me just turn off my video then. Um
All right. He dropped the call, but I'll continue
so
for him. He
yeah,
got a red card from the center for depth. Very weird. Like, yeah, I think he actually got the same call at last year's Sheffield. He got one red light, but he was able to get his three benches in. And going back to this year, he got the one from the center, and then on the side, he got a yellow card. And we weren't able to see a replay from the side, so we don't know if like his butt raised, his foot raised off the ground, his head raised, like it was just kind of weird. And we were waiting to see if the jury would overturn it, but they didn't. Is Ish back?
yeah, I'm back now.
Okay, you can give
I'll
you can
just
give
keep
a little more
my
context.
keep my video off, I guess.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Yeah, Gavin, he got, from what I remember, was it two reds to one? One of the reds was for bench depth, the
Mhm.
center judge, and then he got a red from the side, one of the side judges. I forgot which card it was, but yeah, he did get a bench depth call from the center judge, which is surprising because you know how the rule was introduced to so-called reduce zero roamers, but you know, call Gavin someone who you think would affect the rule would affect him, but yeah, it did end up affecting him, which is a big surprise.
yeah. Like I mean, I would say is like I've never been the biggest fan of the bench step through. Like I understand why it's there, and it
Yeah.
definitely makes it. In theory, it's a better viewing experience because you're seeing like benches that have some sort of range of motion. Um, but like I've never been a fan of it because it's a little bit. It's not as clear cut as some of the other things, and I would say Sean Oriega actually put it well yesterday. He said it's like the reason why bench depth is stupid is because you have people like Gavin getting called on bench depth, right? That's not the purpose of this rule. So if the rule is structured in a way where somebody who clearly has legitimate range of motion is getting called for it, then obviously we have to rethink how we structure this rule. So that I like that take, and I stand by that take. Like I don't think that bench depth should be something controversial when for this kind of lift. Like
Hmm.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know how to fix it. I don't have like a better option, so I'm not here like giving like ways to fix it. But I don't really like things getting changed based off that. But yeah, so that
Yeah,
was like
that's the problem. It's like I agree with you. Like I honestly don't mind there being a rule, like at least some sort of rule to, have a better viewing experience, especially maybe for the lighter weight classes, like a Eddie Berglund style bench. But then you see Gavin, and it's like he has the most like bro style bench. He's close grip. I think honestly his arms are just big, and he's kind of like his elbows come in, and maybe that's why like the depth is iffy sometimes. But yeah, and it's not like this is the first time this happened. Like it's not, or the first time he got a depth call. It's not like a random thing. Like I said, he did get a depth call on like at least two of his benches, I think, at last year's Sheffield. And yeah, it sucks because he got the bench. It wasn't a strength problem, and he missed out on 7.5 kilos there. And I mean, he totaled what, 887. So that could have had him in that conversation with Kaiko and Gustav. Like, I mean, you can always play the game like, oh, if someone got this lift, but with Gavin, it was just I thought it was weird.
I mean, that game is meant for Gavin.
Yeah,
Keep it
definitely.
interesting. He
That's
can't
Gavin's
let it go.
game.
Yeah, he's got to make it exciting. But yeah, I mean, whatever. So that was somewhat controversial, and then yeah, so that was basically the bench. So Gustav had like a pretty expected solid bench. Keiko picked up ground. Carlos
Gustav
Peterson.
did I did want to note Gustav missed his second bench on, I think he jumped the press command on accident, and then he went up anyways, and it wasn't like the third bench was super easy, so he kind of gambled a little bit, but it worked out in his favor.
Right. Yeah. So then coming to deadlifts, obviously, so we've got the four competitors, and they're all like within reason of each other. Now we've got Keiko, Gavin, and Gustav, who neither of them have like a significant edge over the other one in terms of deadlifts. Like none of them are approaching the world record. All like strong deadlifts, but nothing like crazy, and they're all pretty close. And then we also have Carlos Peterson, who has the strongest deadlift of the group, but was a little bit further behind, obviously, because his bench wasn't on par with these other lifters. But I mean, it was a pretty like crazy battle on deadlifts because we see like the few successful, I mean, the only three successful deadlift attempts on their thirds were from these people. So, and that made the huge factor into the overall placing. So, Adriana, you want to just discuss how deadlifts went?
Yeah, sure. So I need to pull up exactly how it was going, but I honestly thought for a second that Delaney could win because after both first attempt deadlifts and after second attempt deadlifts, Delaney was in the lead. And then, yeah, you're right. Like Delaney ended up missing his third deadlift. So I don't know the exact math, but if he could have gotten that, then Kaiko and Gustav would have had to pull more. But yeah, so we go through first and second attempts, pretty standard. Gavin switching to conventional, which wasn't that big of a shock like we thought he was, but you never know. He could have switched on the day. He opened very light at 295 kilos, made that big jump to 320. He was being like very conservative, and he's the burn your ships guy, so he was just going all in on his third deadlift. Um, but yeah, so we're going through deadlifts, or at least third deadlifts. Gavin goes first. He pulls 345, which is a PR. And I don't think it was pulling him into first. I think it must have been pulling
Pulled him second.
into second. Yeah. So pulling him up there and he hits it. And kind of the same story as last year, honestly. Like it wasn't too hard. It looked like he had maybe a little bit more left in the tank. And then we get the same shot of Gavin hitting his third deadlift, celebrating. It pans in. We see Kaiko in the wings. Kaiko comes out, hits his third deadlift at 347.5 kilos, which I think is around his best. Like, I don't know if he's hit 350. I'll have
Not
to,
definitely not in comp.
yeah, definitely not in comp. Or at least not on an international stage. So
No,
having
not
to
in any
like,
comp.
okay, not in any comp. So he's having to do his best. It was hard. It was like a hard limit lift. He gets it up. It's super emotional. He's pulling for the win over Delaney. He's pulled into the win. For a second, I thought my predictions, I thought I was going to be the GOAT predictor with Kaiko coming in the lead. My heart was like beating. It was super exciting, honestly, even if they weren't breaking the world record in terms of like on the women's side by a super huge percentage. It was still like a very close battle. Like after seconds, I genuinely had no idea who was going to win. But yeah, so Kaiko gets his third deadlift. He's like crying. It's super emotional. And then Gustav comes out. And honestly, I did not think he would hit this. Like, even after looking at his training, like he doesn't go super top end in training, but he just has a history of not being able to hit that third deadlift. And he smokes it and he pulls into the win, and it's insane. And yeah, I hope he needs to get the deserved credit for that because he's been in the game for a long time. He's always been so close to being the top 93. And I know a lot of like perhaps Americans wanted like Kaiko to win, but Gustav's an OG, and yeah, this is a deserved win from him.
Yeah, yeah, well said. I mean, it was definitely it lived up. We
Mhm.
had world records. I mean, they both. I mean, both Keiko and Gustav both broke the world record. And yeah, I mean, it was an exciting class to watch, and it will continue to be one of the most exciting classes. Just the amount of people that we have that are within range of like number one is pretty impressive. So I think that was definitely the biggest like battle, and also like the highlight, because A was a battle and B was like a positive battle. Um, so moving on, I would say let's just talk about some of the other battles before we just talk about the overall. So we have the battle of the 74s. Obviously, so we have a rematch of 1 and 2, Cali versus Tim Monagatti. Cali won in Malta, and this played out a little bit differently than maybe some would expect. Ish, do you want to discuss this battle?
Yeah, so with this battle, I think squats kind of went the way we expected, where we said Tim would get the world record. So I think Tim, he scored like 2 kilos under what I thought he would, but still the world record. Calais, his squat didn't go as well as I expected because he'd done 280 in training, which was like an RP 10. And then over here, he looked like he done 270, which was like he had nothing left. So looked like he was a bit down. Bench as well. Like, I mean, I think we all expected Tim to bench around 170, which he did. Calais, Calais' bench, I think was lower than we expected as well. He actually missed his second with 185, so it wasn't look too good, but he did manage to get it for his
Mhm.
third.
It
And
seemed like it
then
was on strength too, right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
maybe he did
hats
a
off
tiny
to him.
yeah, maybe he did a tiny misgroup or whatever, but
Mhm.
his final bench was a grind. Like, he had nothing left as well. And then coming into deadlifts, I think Uh, I think one thing we didn't expect was Tim on his final attempt was actually pulling for the win, which I don't think we
Mhm.
had any of us expected that he would be. But the final attempts in general, 6 of the 12 lifters all try to attempt to pull for the win. 6 of the 12, so it was a pretty crazy session. But yeah, I don't think
Right.
any of us had thought Tim would be in the contention for winning. I mean,
Yeah,
it
I mean,
didn't.
I think it's just something like good to add, right? Good to know, which is that like while obviously none of these men like shattered the world record like the woman did. Part of the reason why the totals are so low is because there were a lot of big jumps for the win, like you mentioned. Like, I didn't think either of these two lifters was going to shatter the world record. I thought they were both were going to break it, but like by 1%. Obviously, that didn't happen. But with a lot of these big jumps and misses, we just saw like a lot of kilos left on the table. So that's part of why these totals are even lower than what you would expect. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, so I don't think any of us expected him to be in that position to pull for the win. Calais, I'd say this is one of my actually all I think nearly all of my men's picks are bad, but this is a bad pick of mine. So it'd be up in third, but I think he finished down in ninth. His second deadlift looked like he really had nothing left, and then I think he took a 10 kilo jump anyway, which was gonna put him into fourth or third. I forgot what it was. It wasn't for the win, but yeah. Um, in this battle, yeah, Tim came out on top. I'd say he finished quite a bit ahead of Kelly at the end, but neither of them broke the world record total, which I think we all expected them to go a tiny bit above, but they did it.
Yeah, I think Tim only finished 4 kilos above Cali.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was
Yeah, but
about
I'm
four
saying
kilos.
yeah, but neither of them were like by the world record. I mean, obviously Tim's attempt would have had him with the world record, but um, yeah. So I mean, I would say just a little bit underwhelming here. Like it's unfair to say underwhelming because both of these lifters hit PRs over what they did at Malta, which got them first and second in the world championships. It's just a little bit unfair to expect, like even if we see it in some other classes or the women, not really in any of the men's classes, but like people to just be adding 20 kilos to total meet to meet. Okay, it just very rarely happens, and like they could have been in the running um, for winning it all. Like what's called again, if Shell hadn't added to the world record total, but with that, like I thought it was very difficult for them to really be in the running, and Callie wasn't really at all. And then Tim, I guess, reached to attempt to be there, but like it was also a little bit more like I don't know how much he left in the tank by taking that like 17 kilo jump, but it definitely was something. But yeah, I mean, just in general, like these are still exciting lifters. They're going to be back next year at Worlds. They're going to have to battle potentially the strongest lifter in the world in Austin Perkins. But I think it was still fun to watch them. They both hit PRs. They both like performed pretty well, just not necessarily as much as people had hyped it up to be.
Yeah,
Okay,
and I guess I'll add something too. Like it was still like a really great battle between them. Like you said, like Tim walked away with the world record squat as expected, but he still was able to perform and hit it twice, as a matter of fact. So that was awesome. And both of them did hit the world record deadlift on their second, and it was back to back. So that was pretty cool. Like Callie had hit 330.5 on his second, and kind of like Itch said, like it wasn't an all-out lift, but it didn't look like he had another like 10 kilos in the tank. Like kind of like at Worlds, he was able to hit that last deadlift and it looked like he could have had around like 10, 12 and a half kilos in left in the tank. But this one was just a little harder. And then Tim was able to honestly smoke 331 kilos. And when he loaded up for the win, like I was scared because that was I believe he went right after Kaiko actually, because so that's why it was so exciting. Like it was a theme, like at least on my predictions, that the women kind of overperformed and the men like sort of underperformed. So that's kind of interesting, but it was still exciting. Like Kaiko, just because of how close it is, like Kaiko had pulled into the win. I was like screaming, like my heart was beating. I was like, Kaiko's gonna win. Tim comes out right after, puts on 348.5 kilos, which I honestly like wasn't sure if he was gonna hit it because like I didn't think it was a complete YOLO, like there's no chance he's gonna hit this, because he did hit that like 345 kilos in training and it wasn't an all-out lift. So I was like, is Tim about to pull for the win? Like it was pretty exciting. But yeah, I mean it ended up they still did great. They still added like Tim added like a little more than 10 kilos to his personal best total, which like Mike said, like yeah, it's just like it's kind of hard to expect, or it's kind of hard to predict, like when these lifters are overreaching, or like you don't know if they're going to go like way over the world record, or they're just kind of going to be like close but not exactly like smash it out of the park. So yeah, I'm excited to see them rematch at Worlds and see them go against Perk and see them like having to level up because of that.
yeah, so yeah, definitely. And then the last weight class where we had a battle was, of course, we had the 66s. Now, we were all in agreement that theoretically, based off training, both these 66s could have broken the world record. But we also were all in agreement that these 66s were two of the lifters that had like some of the most red flags in terms of like putting up crazy performances. And I think like we were kind of like we weren't right on our actual totals because we thought we were just like hoping slash assuming that they just have the day that they potentially could, but and neither of them really did that. But it was just interesting. I mean, Pana obviously he hit his 240 opening squat and then jumped 12 and a half, missed that twice. Kyoto missed his opener, so he had to retake and then ended with 240, which is probably a little bit less than expected. Also, bench was like reasonable. 170 for Kyoto, a little bit less than expected, and then 172 for Pana. And then on deadlifts, Kyoto just had the same issue he's been having. Like he hits his opener, and then he just usually takes like a pretty big jump, and like he'll have grip issues or lockout issues, and like I mean, I guess we were hoping that like he's fixed them, but there's nothing that shows me now that like it's at all close to being fixed. So until he can fix that and hit his like top end deadlifts and hold them and get whites, like that'll continue to be an issue. And I guess like yeah, that's Ish.
Um, yeah,
what are your
I want
thoughts?
to add on that deadlift point. So I think his deadlift issue, his main issue before was soft knees, where they would never be locked out. That's why he would get red lights before. And I don't think grip has actually been an issue for him before, but this competition, he was actually locking his knees out. Like there was no issues there. But in the second attempt, he lost his grip. His third one, he actually held onto it, but then you saw right at the top, he lost his balance, then he fell over as well. So I think he's fixed one issue with his deadlift, which is the knees, but it seems like he's ended up getting another one. And it was actually very close because he did lock you out. Like that pull was taking him to provisional first. And obviously afterwards, after with the others lifting, he would have put him down to third with Gustav and Keiko getting ahead. But yeah, just that one pull. I had him up in second for my predictions, but him not getting that pull made him finish near the bottom of the prediction, near the bottom of the results.
Yeah.
Right. Like it's just like I agree with you. Like that last deadlift, I honestly thought he had it, and he was kind of trying to sell it after like he didn't lose his balance, but then he just got 3 reds. And yeah, I actually forgot that he was pulling for the win at that point. So like that just shows how like crazy these last deadlifts were. And with Panna, honestly, it's just that squat. Like it's such a shame that he kind of took like the quote unquote like French method of attempts. And or I guess he also had a hard cut too. And he went for that 252.5 kilo squat on his second attempt, and it just didn't go. So if he had gotten that, he actually, and everyone else did the same thing. Like obviously things would have shaken up a bit differently. But if he had got that squat, like if you give those kilos back, he would have placed second. Or he would have been able to like potentially break the world record total, which as we know, only 3 men did. So yeah, it's just like it's a shame because like I honestly in my heart had him like placing fourth. Like I thought he could do not 730, but like at least break the world record. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what we're gonna see from him going forward. Like I don't know if eventually we'll see like better attempt selection, or if he's gonna have to move up a weight class, but I guess not. Like Panna, and he's always got that fire in him, so I don't think he's done. Like he'll come back. He'll come back with a vengeance.
Yeah, that's for sure. Yeah, and I would say one thing about this class is like it's tough because we've gotten to the point with the 74s like pushing the world record and everything so much. Where like it used to be like, yeah, you get too big for a class, you move up. But like to move up from 66 to 74, we're talking like 100 kilo differences really in these totals. So that's not like a simple thing. So people are just going to stick it out. And I do think though that this is one of the, I mean, there's a lot of them and we'll discuss later, but this can be one of them that next year at Sheffield could potentially be shattered. So,
Yeah.
because it objectively compared to some of the other classes is a lower total. Like if you compare it to like the
Like if
difference
you
in
look at the good lift points, like it is
not just good, not that yes by good lift, but also if you just look at it in terms of like the difference in totals from weight class to weight class, like the
oh
jump in
right,
66 to 74 is massive. So it's like, yeah, so that's just whatever. Um, okay, so obviously those are the only like actual head-to-head battles. We're gonna discuss obviously some individual performances and lifts soon. I'm just gonna run down like the actual placings, and then we'll discuss some of the individual stuff. So we had Gustav winning, Keiko in second, Delaney in third. Those are the only three who actually broke the world record total. Gavin in fourth, Panna still cracked the top five. Tim Monagatti sixth, Carlos Peterson Griffith seventh, which is still like very impressive performance. I don't think many people had him that high up. Anatoly 8, Cali 9, Kyoto 10th, Jesus 11th, obviously going to be one of the biggest surprises, and Tony Clifton 12th. So now, which individual performances do we want to start with? I guess, Adriana, you want to start with probably the biggest one here?
who you talk about, Delaney, or let's start with Delaney. That's a
Okay.
positive note.
Okay.
I think someone had actually commented on our preview post saying we were underestimating Delaney, and that lived up. Like we were, and I think a lot of people were, just because he wasn't posting, like he was injured. I think just like a few months ago in the fall, he was posting that he could barely do like 2 plates, 3 plates on squats. And yeah, he turned it around just in time, and he finally before Russ comes back, he was able to break that world record total. So he totaled 842.5, which is a massive performance for an 83 kilo lifter. And yeah, Delaney lived up and he performed. He only missed his last deadlift. And he only jumped 5 kilos. So that's kind of a thing where it's like, well, do you jump 2.5, like in hindsight? But I don't know. I didn't think it was a bad call based on his second. And yeah, I mean, if he had got that third deadlift, he could have potentially won just based on like how like everyone else went after him, how Kaiko and Gustav did. And yeah, I mean, he did great. He got a 305 kilo squat. I think that matches his best. I'm not quite sure. And he got a bench PR with a 207.5 kilo bench. And on both of those lists, he had problems with them at Worlds, like somewhat controversial problems, but still problems. With squat, I think I think it was depth or his knees were kind of soft, and or at least according to the jury who overturned it. And then his bench, they called him out on his elbows being soft, but yesterday his lifts looked like clean, like undeniable across the board. So yeah, it was a big shock, but it was awesome to see.
Yeah, I was just say shout out to Connor Walker, CJ underscore lightweight, the one who pointed out that we were underestimating Delaney. And yeah, I mean, I kind of actually thought Delaney was going to be in this realm. I had him at 300 on squat, and he had 305. I had him at 205 bench. He had 207.5, and I had the exact 330 on deadlift. I mean, Delaney's one of the powerlifters I've known for the longest, and he's an awesome dude. And I'm super happy that he was able to break Russ's world record now before it potentially gets broken by a lot. And it was a crazy performance. I mean, I guess people, I don't know much about his injury, and he hadn't really been posting. And I guess a lot of people just took it that like he wasn't gonna really be anywhere near his best. And for the second straight year, he might have had an underwhelming performance at Worlds and had a really strong performance at Sheffield. So, congrats Delaney on breaking the world record total, having coming on the podium in the overall placings in Sheffield. And I mean, we're gonna get to see some battles, Delaney and Russ in the future, maybe. But this was definitely one of the highlight of the meets in terms of somebody positively outperforming what was expected.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's the biggest positive shock of the meet because I had Delaney in last place. And he almost won the entire meet. So I don't know what happened. He has a miracle recovery because I remember a few months ago he's posting those 2 plate squats and he was mentioning himself that his injury had gone worse post Worlds. But I know who was doing his rehab, was it Flex someone else, but they worked magic. And yeah, all the 83s have been chasing Ross's world record total and finally broke it. I think this also brings it to question now as well. Who do you consider the best 83? Because Ross and Delaney both had 2 world titles. Delaney has the world record total, and he's also got a Sheffield podium. I mean, Ross has got more national titles, but they're pretty level now in terms of accomplishments. So.
So I don't want to take away any credit from Delaney, right? Obviously, he's won back-to-back world championships, and he just broke the world record total. So right now, Delaney is the number one 83 in the world. Now, do I think he's the strongest 83? No, but I'm just going to give him his title and leave it at that for now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like I agree with you, Ish. Like I thought this was the biggest positive shock of the meet. Like honestly, when it was down to those deadlifts, and like I said, after second attempts, Delaney was still in first. I was honestly like, dude, like I was like my number one, I wanted Kaiko to win just so I could be right. But my number two, I was like, if Kaiko doesn't win, I honestly want Delaney to win just for the storyline. But yeah, he did great.
Okay, so we're going to move on into a different direction, and I would say potentially one of the other biggest storylines, which is not necessarily a positive, was I think the majority of people had Jesus as the favorite to win it all here, and Obviously, he didn't. Finished in 11th place. Now, this was interesting because it started off exactly how it should, right? He comes in, hits like a relatively easy like opening squat with like 800, 930 pounds or whatever, jumps up to 1K, makes it look like a warm up, jumps up to 478 for the world record to break Ray's world record. And for all of you who are unaware, you have to hit it at an international competition for it to be a world record. Anyway, hits that, takes the world record, starts off strong, moves on the bench, opens with 255, hits it, jumps a little big to 275, bigger than I was thinking. I was thinking more like 270, but whatever. And just misses. And it's like, oh no, like that's a lot of key. Meaning, it's one thing when you take these small jumps, second to third, especially in some of these lighter weight classes, it doesn't make the biggest difference if you miss in terms of your overall total. But taking a 20 kilo jump on bench first to second and being stuck with your opener, that could hurt. So he takes that, misses, retakes it, and I would say he hits it like relatively easy. Not like super easy, but like didn't look all out. And then misses the rack command. Now that was like, I mean, Jesus is like, he's still young. So like we forget he's like, I think like 26 or something. Like he's like my age. But like he's a vet in the sport, even though he's young. Like he's a multiple time world champion, at 3, right? I think 3-time world champion, Sheffield champion, has who knows how many accolades. And it's a little surprising when you just have like it's just, I mean, it can happen to anyone. You just retook another 600 plus pound bench after missing it, and it moves well, and you just missed that rack command. And that was obviously a huge hit because lost down 20 kilos and 20 kilos that were there. We're not talking about taking a 20-kilo jump and missing and not knowing how much he left on the table. We're talking he had it. So that was obviously tough. And then comes into deadlifts and opens with 380. And I don't even know what happened on the opener.
I think he
Somebody
just
want
like stumbled, or Ish can help
Yeah.
us too. Yeah, he just like stumbled, like lost his balance,
Yeah,
took a step back.
yeah. So he moved it so fast that he ended up getting on his heels, and then that made him lose his balance and also drop the bar.
Right. Okay.
It's
So that was the opener.
interesting because the same thing happened to the other super heavyweights on the women's side. Like both
Yeah.
Sonita and Brittany missed their opener, which is like very, very strange for Brittany because she's an executionist. And it was just kind of weird. Like my friend had wondered if something was wrong with the platform, or I don't know, but they all just kind of stumbled on their opener and missed it.
Yeah. So obviously now we just, after missing that third bench, which he had, like now he took another a miss on his opening deadlift. So now he's in like a tough spot because for somebody that's strong and that big, like we're talking big jumps. So each miss is like huge. And then obviously he wants to lock in his squat world record, right?
Mm.
Also just the cash. So he retakes 380, even though that's like not really like that's working weight at this point for him, and hits it easily on a second. And then obviously he has the biggest deadlift, so he gets the load where everyone wants third, and he decides he's going for it all, right? I mean, by doing this, he would lock in a lot of cash, obviously, because by going for it all, it would give him, if he hit the deadlift world record, the total world record in first place. So literally, if he hits that pull is for 35,000 pounds. Literally, because he jumped from like 11th to first, so like it's for all of it, and jumps to 429 kilos, which is just a bit out of reach, and ends up like finishing in 11th, where most people had him in first, and if not first, basically everyone had him like on their podium. So that was definitely one of the, like, I don't even want to say disappointment. Like he still hit 1113 kilo total and broke the world record squat, but not exactly as expected.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Anything to add?
Yeah, I mean, like I don't want to harp on it too much. Like I saw in his story today, he said he woke up and he thought he was in a nightmare. Like honestly, that's how I would describe it. Like it was just a shame because I think he was the heavy favorite going in. He had these expectations on him to potentially break the wrapped world record, and like win it all again. So yeah, it sucks, but he'll be able to come back. Like he's had down performances before. last year at Sheffield, he was a wild card. Like he did win the world championships in 2022, but he again had like a kind of a down meet, and he wasn't able to secure the Sheffield invite with the 95%. And then he comes back and he has like one of the greatest performances in powerlifting history at Sheffield. So yeah, I mean, it sucks, but I think he'll come back and he'll be able to smash the world record and potentially one day total 1,200 kilos.
Yeah, I have no doubt. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
listen, we've seen his crazy lifts in training. His squat at this point is like, we used to be not sure whether depth, this, that, but like he's just at this point been executing squat. Deadlift is still just a little bit iffy just because there's just so many variables in terms of his pull. But like this just wasn't like it wasn't like he like hit 380, jumped to 400 and missed, and then jumped to 415 and missed. Like he had like a small error on his opener, retook it, and then jumped to like the end of the range that we thought was possible. So like we didn't really like see that like we didn't see him like fail like on things that he should have on deadlift. It was more like, so I mean it's whatever. It was a 49 kilo jump. Okay. For perspective, 110-pound jump. So I mean, I'm not worried. He'll be back. He's gonna win worlds next year, and we'll see him again at Sheffield in 2025.
Yeah, just I think we all just bring in that one point as well, that miss on bench. And if he actually got that bench, he would have had to load 410, which is something he's done training multiple times. I don't know about you guys, but I would say on the day, Jesus was probably the strongest lifter on the day, but obviously due to execution errors, he didn't execute, and that's what made him lose the title, the possible title. But I think in hindsight, it's could be good for him because next year we know the monsters that are coming and how well we expect probably massive percentage increases on the world record total. So considering he didn't break it this year, it could probably possibly help him for next year, try and get the title back.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I don't think next year 2.5% is really going to cut it on the men's side, but it definitely will have to give him something more attainable, at least for placing. Like I don't know that like it would take an insane amount of progress at a crazy total already for him to be competitive with people that like. I mean, whatever. We'll just mention it for a second, even though I don't really want to mention too much. Like we have people like Perk who are coming in who are like already 50 kilos over the world record. So like we have people that like that even on like average performance days can probably break the world record by a few percent. Like let's just say 3% just to like be conservative. That's taking a lot of kilos off based off like some additional things. So it'll definitely be tough. But I mean he's the strongest lifter to ever live and he'll be back and yeah. So who else? Did we not mention at all? I would
I
say okay,
think
so we
just
didn't mention
Anatoly and Tony Cliff.
yeah, so I guess
Anatoly.
I'll mention Anatoly real quick. So he was another one of the lifters that hadn't been posting regularly, and we weren't sure. I kind of said beforehand that I thought maybe it was like not actually injured, and then he comes out and squats 363 for the world record squat, so it looked like he was fine there. And then bench 227.5, which was right around where I thought he was going to be. On deadlift, I'm not sure if he was dealing with an injury that like affected his deadlift as opposed to his squat. But obviously, it wasn't his best day there. He hit 335, jumped to 350, and that was like not really close. So he didn't really end up relatively near the world record total. He ended up like 925.5, which still a strong day, and still walked away with the world record squat. But just I would say this is probably around where most people had. I mean, a lot of people didn't think he was going to take the squat because he thought he was hurt, but like most people didn't really have him like super competitive for winning or even really top five so much. So I would think this like wasn't a major surprise here. Um, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it was awesome to see him like come back from injury and being able to hit that squat world record. And kind of be around where we thought he was on bench. Like some people thought he might have been able to do the bench world record. He was just kind of where he was at Euros. And then yeah, deadlifts, like he was actually pulling to break the world record total by half a kilo. So I would have to look back, but I think he must have been pulling into like third or fourth, probably fourth over Gavin. Or no, I think at the time he was I don't exactly remember, but he was pulling up high, and to be like in my ranking, he was like 10th
Yeah, I think
place.
he was pulling for third.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he was pulling for third. So like that's awesome. Like even though it was kind of out of reach and maybe that injury was more so on deadlift, he was still had a shot at placing that high, which is great for him. So yeah, I mean, we'll see him again at Worlds. Maybe not Euros. I think Euros is probably too soon, the next Euros. So yeah, we'll see him again at Worlds and excited to see how far he pushes it, who he's going to battle with, potentially someone from USA. So yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Ish, anything?
Yeah, with Anatoly, just that squat. Yeah, it was probably, I think that's the fastest squat he's ever done for world record as well. It looked like he had 370 on the day, honestly. Obviously, bench and deadlifts were a bit down. My bench, I thought he would actually try for the world record because of the Euros he did, but I don't know. He didn't even come out for his third bench, so maybe he injured himself in the second or something.
Oh no, his second was just all out. Like I mean, you were in person, so maybe not the
Yeah, it
best.
was all out, but I thought he would try it again, so, but he didn't even attempt it.
Yeah,
But,
so that was
and
yeah. I didn't think. I mean, I didn't have him breaking the world record bench, and yeah, he benched right around where I thought it was. So it was basically like as expected. I mean, I was assuming he was healthy, so I thought he was going to deadlift a little more. And that was basically the main difference in where I had him. And then the only other lifter we haven't mentioned was Tony Cliff, who I mean, other than some of the lifters who potentially were injured, he was the one that like by the numbers seemed the furthest away from the lifters that were injured and Carlos Peterson Griffith, who hadn't come close to what he had done yet. He was the one who was like by far the furthest away from the actual world record total. So I don't think it's really surprising that he finished where he did. He also just took like crazy jumps to like try to break the world record.
yeah,
But if you have more insight to add, because I don't really have insight on this, it's just
yeah. So for Tony, yeah, he scored 355, which is around like what we expected. Bench he opened with 240, which looked kind of difficult, but obviously it's a bit hard to tell with like these bigger guys how much more they have in the tank. And then the second and third, he attempted Dennis Cornelius's world record to break that, and he missed both of those. Deadlifts was kind of interesting. So his opener was fine. His second, as Adriana mentioned earlier, a lot of the big guys just had issues with falling over. So Tony had that as well, where he was going up and then he lost his balance halfway through the lift. So he didn't get that. And then his final deadlift was just Hail Mary 385 to try and break Dennis's world record total, which wasn't close. But yeah, if he just retook that 360, I think he would have finished somewhere near the bottom still anyway.
Yeah.
So that was just going all out.
I think he would have been around his PR total with the 360. So that, or I think a little bit over his best total. So yeah, I guess like his squats he started out well with squats, like hitting the I think 5 kilo PR, but then bench it's kind of like if you miss a 13.5 kilo jump, it's kind of the same story with Jesus, but just a little less dramatic. Like he missed the world record bench twice, so it's like you're only walking away with your opener. It's going to be tough to make up that ground in the deadlift to hit the world record or like frankly even come close. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I wasn't really surprised to be honest.
Hmm.
I did have him breaking the world record bench, but like I watched his training and his pauses on like those benches that were around the world record were a bit short in my opinion. So I had him as like that was right around his top end, and then he jumped straight to it on his second, then it wasn't there. So like I wasn't really surprised at all on the day. I would say like he squatted where we thought he was. He benched. He jumped to like right his top end and couldn't hit it, and then deadlift. Obviously, there was like that issue on his second, but yeah, I mean that was basically it. So if anyone has anything to add about any of the lifters now,
Yeah, I have one thing to add. So I want to talk about Carlos. So I think this was probably my best prediction that I made. I think I had him higher up than most people did. I had him predicted at eight and he got seventh. So yeah, he ended up totaling with 870 plus total, which I think after this meet, I don't know about you guys, but I'd say he's joined that upper echelon of 93s and he's really a threat now, which these guys they can't sleep on him. and his bench,
Right.
he did make a lot of progress. So I think, yeah, I don't know about this Worlds if he'll be battling, but definitely by next year, like, can't sleep on this guy anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think his bench is going to have to go up a little bit more still, just to be competitive with people that are 20 to 60 kilos above him. But yeah, I that definitely was like a positive surprise. Like he was one of the people who talked a lot before, and I mean, he didn't hit like the world record, but like he did, like he mostly lived up to it. Like hit a huge
Yeah,
total PR, and yeah, and now he's on everyone's radar. So I would say, yeah, that's a good good person to finish off with. Somebody that like came in pretty unknown, not one of the 93s who had really been in the battle previously, and I mean, he's in the bat. He's like within reason for the total, and right there with the squat and closing in on the deadlift also. So he'll be somebody to watch out for.
yeah,
Yeah. So before we finish off, I would just say, like Sheffield was insane meet to watch, and I mean we're just gonna have more, and hopefully over the next couple of weeks, maybe we'll be able to get some interviews on with some of the lifters that competed. So stay tuned for further content coming out, and yeah, um, I would say signing off from our Sheffield recap and moving on to powerlifting in 2024.